Hello and welcome to this Oliver White panel discussion on leadership and change. I'm Oliver Pickup. I'm a London-based technology and business journalist. So to discuss all this with me today are three Oliver White partners. We've got Kirsty, Monty, and Les. These are leaders who've taken businesses through complex change. So let's start with the opening question. Kirsty, why do you believe people suffer change fatigue? What would your point be here?
People have to understand what's in it for them.
Yeah.
There has to be some realization of what am I going to benefit from, and understanding that bigger picture. And in many cases, people are sold a vision that doesn't relate to them. So they put tremendous amount of effort in and don't see any benefit from it. And then the next change comes along. And so it just adds to another workload is how they feel, rather than actually making their lives different for the good of the overall change.
Change is happening to them rather than being driven by them.
And with them, yes,
And
exactly.
with them. And I suppose to follow up on that, to what extent would you think that employees need to co-create with employers?
Absolutely. If they absolutely have to co-create, because not every change is always going to deliver direct benefit, but longer term, if you look at it from end to end, that absolutely is benefit, and things then should get easier in one camp, even if they're different in the second camp. But if you don't see that, it just feels like extra work work for no more gain.
Yeah.
So if we don't work together, we're never going to be able to see.
It's that trust again, isn't it? Is that sort of...
It's trust and realization of that of the promise.
Yeah, exactly. Monty, would you like to come in here on change fatigue?
It's an interesting one because both Liz and Kirsty has already started building on a theme, but if we can take that theme to its fruition, right? When you are in a change, when you are nominated to be part of a change in a business, generally people get excited if they believe it's the right thing. But change fatigue is also a combination of my past experiences with change. And so it's interesting for us that often when a business tries a giant change transformation and fails, it consumes the people who is part of that project, right? So they are consumed into this project, they're special, they've been put in a place. And meanwhile, their colleagues have gone on with their careers and their lives, and they come back a year or two later after this program of work and go, nothing's changed for me, but this guy's been promoted and that person's been moving on, and look at the exciting thing. So they learn from that. And it's so difficult when we go into organizations that we need somebody to help us drive the change, to find people these days, because everybody's going, yeah, but I'm tired of failing in change programs when I can succeed in the day-to-day. And I think part of this change fatigue is just that we've completely misdesigned, coming back to what something Lisa said earlier, the way we bring people into change programs, the way we make them deliver successfully, and the way we reward them for that success. Because we link the change to a global vision 2, 3, 4 years from now, instead of saying, here's something you're going to do, you're going to be delivered, and you're going to be rewarded for that. But now here's the second piece, which is, and I can only think of one of my clients who we have this exact issue with, is that sometimes that change has to be self-motivated change. It can't always be somebody from the outside saying, I want you to do this for the next 6 months, and bang, there you're going to get this. You've got to recognize that as part of your change journey in the business, you have the opportunity to make something better today, the next day, the next month, the next year. So it's for me, it's about saying, change fatigue is because people just don't get the excitement of the engine running. They see the boredom of the journey, but not the excitement of the engine running. And I was using this example of a client of mine. I was reflecting on that now while Kirsty was talking. Nobody in that business dares to change anything. You can speak to them and they will tell you, what's wrong? Oh, this is wrong. How do we fix it? We fix it. Why haven't you done it?
Oh, well, I was going to ask about that, because these are safe behaviours. Is it a
fear
fear of failure, though?
I would, I think fear of failure is an easy scapegoat.
Yeah.
I would say if I had to change that a little bit on its head, I would say it is the lack of experience of success. It's not that I will fail, it's that I've never stuck my head out and experienced success. It's the acceptance of the mediocre, if I could put it that way. It's a behavior that says, tomorrow I'll change, but today if I did what I did yesterday, then I will be okay. And that for me is it's that. So be very careful when we talk about fear of failure.
Yeah.
I would almost say, going back to repeat myself, and I think that's where Kirsty's alluding to as well. It's more to do with the reward isn't worth the risk.
Yeah.
Fear of exposure is how I would phrase it.
And because we can't frame the reward in a way that it's, especially in this millennial and lower environment, in a way that it's tangible, it's on the horizon, and it's something I can attach my name to.
Yeah, I guess
That I into that.
I guess there's the opposite side to this. Look, with 10 change programs a year, you can see that I'm old, right? The fact that I'm old, maybe you could argue I'm wiser, but maybe you can also argue that experience isn't going to be as valuable in the future as people that are capable of changing, right? 10 a year now, the rate of technology change, etc., is only increasing. I guess what we misinterpret here is the people that are now coming to work in business are so used to change in their personal lives, right? They're not struggling with technology. In fact, it was maybe sad but interesting, the amount of 15-year-olds that are now being arrested because they're the people that are getting into people's systems.
The cyber criminals, yeah.
Well, that's not people that aren't used to technology,
No.
right? And so they're disruptors, but people are used to the disruption. They're used to actually that underlying change. So, because for me, the danger is here. We're painting a picture that it's, that says people aren't ready. They are ready. Absolutely. They practice 10 times a year, so we should be bloody good at this. So, I think there is a lot of success, and that's for me, what you have to do is look at this from an analysis point of view and say, why are the successful ones so successful? Why do they fail? And it fundamentally just comes back down to this picture, the involvement. People are my best asset, right? My valued asset. How many times have we all heard leaders say that?
Yeah.
Well, if they are your most valued asset, how do you make sure that when they're involved in change, it's going to be successful? How do you protect them by you making sure that it will be successful? How do you encourage and reward? All of these things come back to the fundamental here of leadership for change. We're not talking about skills that people don't have. We're just talking about, if you're going to make a change, be ready for the outcome of that. If you're not ready for the outcome, don't make the change because you'll waste this opportunity with all these people that are primed in today's world for change. Because in their daily lives outside of work, change is still a constant.
And it's a successful constant. I think, just reflecting on what Les has just said, when we experience change in our daily digital lives, we don't experience trial and error as much as when we started, when the world of electronics started. Something that worked was the surprise. But today it's not. Today in our personal lives, when we buy a new television and we switch it on, it must work. When we download an app from a cell phone, we don't want to see a message when we open it that goes, this app is still under development and might fail some of the time. When we go and we change anything in our personal lives, we are not only used to change, but used to change to works. Then we go to the workplace and we're part of a change program. And after 3 to 6 months, it's not working. It's not delivering. Nobody's sure what's meant to be happening. It's not clear. I'm not convinced that what I thought I got in the beginning is what I'm seeing in front of me. And it's just, I think the more and more the world out there gets used to change, to Les's point, the less and less we are accepting of change and program failure is in the businesses we work in. And yet so much, and maybe this comes back to your management age thing, of the world, the corporate world, is about when we go to clients. I mean, it's spectacular. We will go to clients and we'll say, what reports do you use? We use D10 reports. Are they right? No. How long have they been wrong? Years. How do you do your daily work? Well, I have to do this in Excel and this in the system and this in this program and this in this program. Why not in one program? Oh, no, but they don't talk to each other. How long has that been the case? Years. It's just, and then we go through a change journey, and the first thing we do in the change journey says, here's all the things that we cannot do because it won't work. It's just, there's, in my mind, Ollie, a total and complete disconnection between the standards that we accept for things to work in our lives and what corporates allow themselves to get away with.
But I think the difference is, in our lives, a lot of that is individually we're changing. In the environments that we're talking about in companies, we need a great body of people to be changing, and they can't align to one vision. What's good for one is different to another, and there will be benefit there, but they have to understand what that is and what that means for them, so that the body can move and accept the change, not the individual.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big difference we're facing with here. Individually, people do accept change, but we've got to take that step together.
I think so. And I think you can even draw parallels badly, probably because it's so sad, is that, even in recent times when governments have wanted to make change in our behaviours to do with COVID or whatever, people typically were willing to change, the vast majority. But the minute, and this is why it was such a failure, the minute that they see the very same people that are telling them to change, not adopt something themselves, is the minute that's the signal you didn't really mean this.
Completely.
You've lost.
Lose it. No, yeah.
Absolutely. And you just think that's an example, but then, look at the same examples in companies and say that the same thing doesn't happen. People were willing, then they saw the wrong behaviour, and all of a sudden, thump.
Yeah,
right. And it's exactly the same there, which is why that was so critical that people behaved in the epitome of right, but the minute they didn't was a shame to everybody, because it in that situation it was dreadful, right? Whilst business doesn't have the same dreadful outcome, albeit sometimes individuals suffer through poor change, it's still the same principle. If you're going to say to people to do something differently, then show them be an exemplified leader in what that means, and that you are willing to do what you're asking.
It's a great example, but we're still here in the UK feeling the repercussions of that behaviour, because there is scrutiny on the next leader, and mistrust is already there, and that's the problem we're suffering. So we've done the what, we've done the why. How can organisations tackle this now? Monty, how important is storytelling here?
I mean, storytelling is important whenever I'm trying to. So let's put the pieces together. I need to get you to change. You need to understand that the change is good for you, right? And you need to understand that the change will be successful. So in order for you to believe that, I need to put you and your mind in a place where that change exists, right? But I also need to make you understand that that change exists for you. Because if I explain that wonderful world to you in a way that it's somebody else's change, right? You're going to go, that's great, but that's not me, right? You need to be able to make the relate for yourself. Now, storytelling is nothing else but creating a shared, I would say, environment where you can place yourself within that role. Often when we tell stories, so just to give an example, often when we tell stories to our clients, when we teach or when we talk to them, we're telling them the story not to show them how bad or good somebody else is, but to help them place themselves in that environment and either recognize their own situation or to recognize that they can also be in that better situation. And then the wheels of change start turning. Because if I don't see myself in that, if I don't see my new self, and this sounds very individualistic, but it's the same for companies. If we don't visualize ourselves in this new story, why is the old story not good enough, right? So storytelling is about connecting the dots between where you are, where you want to go with the change, but in a way that it is personal. So if you are a leader, let's take that to a leader. If I'm a leader and I come to you and I say, I want you to change, then you go, okay. If I come to you and I say, let me tell you why this worked for me. Let me tell you a story, because you're really looking up to me as a leader. Let me tell you a story about how I applied this that I want you to apply. It might not be the same context. I might be telling a story about the day I used my calculator for the first time, and I want you to use a very complex AI tool for the first time. But I'm telling you the same emotional story. Then you can relate. The moment you relate, it's not just about the relate to the story. It's about the relation between, I understand the risk you want me to take, because I know you had to take that risk yourself. So suddenly I'm going, my leader gets the situation. He gets the story. He can tell the story to me in a way that I believe it. And that's why it's so important that you can articulate that as a leader. I think the worst thing that a leader can do if they want their teams to change is to make them sound like this is something that's a third party or an arm's length change. Is to say something like, we are going to go on this great change, nothing about me, where you guys are going to see so many amazing things, so many wonderful things happen, and everybody going, please, I'm going to use you spoke about leaders. One of the worst examples of leadership we're seeing in so many companies today is the lack of shared values between the leadership and the employees that they want to change, right? And a lot of that has to do with the fact that when the leaders tell their stories, they do not connect with the employees at all.
Do you think that's something you're seeing just now as companies are having these teething problems to be, in the digital age? Or is this something that's always been there?
It's always been there.
It's always been there.
I think we say about the digital age, and I always reflect back, that for those that are of an age like me, I guess I can go back to the first computers, right, that replaced telex, ticker tape stuff, for running it, or cards, job cards, etc. And then along came a computer. The size of that change was huge, right? But actually, if you looked at some of the changes now to do technology, etc., they're not as big as that. They're really advances on that, which is why, when in today's world, why on earth people mess up implementing ERP systems when they've been around for so many years, the last 60 years, is beyond me, right? Because there's a proven model. If you integrate people, process, the behavioral outcome, and the system, then you'll hit the sweet spot in the middle. If you do process and system without involving people, you won't hit that sweet spot. You won't deliver the business benefit. People still implement a computer onto people and wonder why people are still using Excel, right? So that's still change. So, and I think for me, I think we shouldn't forget, we talk about change and we talk about integrated change in Oliver White. That's because we don't come along with a separate toolkit and say, right, you need to now do heat maps to understand what the change is in different people, etc. We don't say to people, that you need to develop what the capabilities need to look like, because actually that's an integral part of what we do. However, companies, to be successful, do need to understand that the toolkit to go alongside a change are very useful techniques that have been practiced for years, that if you're going to make 10 changes a year, you don't want to buy those things in. You just want to make it, you want to come to the point where you're consciously competent. And then you want to move into, and this is where Oliver White exists, the world of unconsciously competent in using those methodologies so that every change we make, they're part of that, right? You're using those techniques to be successful. And business is no different. In fact, it's worse, because if you're making 10 changes a year and you've got 10 opportunities to practice, then by the end of a year, you should be really excellent at making change, right? If you believe in continuous improvement. But what it comes down to is apply the right tools to any change. Make sure you've got the integration of people and process behavior change required system if you need it. Map those things out, then make the change, right? So there's an approach to this to be successful. So whilst we've talked a lot about leadership, you do need to recognise that the world has had these techniques around for many years. We've had our Oliver White proven path for over 50 years, right? And we follow it, right? That's why we call it a proven path, because it works, right? That is an integrated approach to any change where it brings in, why are we changing? What's the point of commitment? Then it recognises, what should we be doing? Where's the change in terms of people? What's the behaviour that we need people to adopt? Hence our focus. What do we need to do differently? What knowledge do people need to make that change? Right? What stories do they need to have to actually put themselves in the place of that change? And of course, in today's world, typically, what systems do they need so that they don't become frustrated that they got this new way of working, they understand the need, they can see leadership's a focus, but, we don't have the right tool, because that's just called a bit of frustration. So I think, we mustn't underestimate there is techniques that people can practice to bring this into the real world, if you like. But if they do, then after a year, you should be excellent, right? And in fact, if you get a failure, you should see it as an opportunity to say, what went wrong? What can I do to improve?
Yeah, exactly. Right. I want to come to you, Kirsty, and talk about, coaching and the importance of that. But just on the point of the power of storytelling and talking about tools, this is something that's inherent. We are by nature, we love hearing and telling stories. In fact, you could argue it's why Neanderthals didn't develop as much as Homo sapiens. And there are stats around this. If you tell a dry fact, only 2 parts of your brain light up. And if you actually wrap it in a story, all 7 parts of your brain light up. It's reckoned that if you wrap a fact in a story, it's 22 more times memorable than just a fact alone. But anyway, let's talk about coaching and the power of coaching, another tool.
Coaching is the you can argue the element in reality that helps to embed and convert what people are listening and hearing and being told what they need to do in terms of their tools, in however way it's being created, into actually then really making it happen and I suppose implementing the change, but doing it in a way that it's now their journey, that they're very much driving themselves, but we're enabling people to have somebody there that they can reach out to and have somebody there that's going to just nudge them along in the right direction, but they maintain that ownership of this change themselves with support.
So talk me through how this works then, if Oliver White is going to help with the coaching here. What was the process?
So I suppose it goes back to, going back to the way that Les just described it, we would never come in to an organisation and try and coach a change through. The process is working sometimes one-to-one with small people to help them translate what they've heard in you could argue theory or in the classroom style into how you actually now make it happen in the real world and within their working environment. But by then they have to have understood, why do they need to make the change? What's the vision and what does it mean? How do they actually then interpret, okay, what is it we need to do differently? And this is actually doing the doing. But while they're doing the doing, we're not doing it because they need to engage with it, own it, embed it themselves, but can't be expected as they're on this journey that they know all the answers, because we've been there many, many times before. And so we're helping them to make sure they don't make the mistakes, but follow that path through. Yeah. So it's a helping hand that just keeps nudging them and helping them to grow as they drive the benefits.
And we talked about proven path here, but I know that Oliver White is now thinking about from method to meaning. So Monty, perhaps you can explain how that fits in here.
Well, method to meaning is not as much a thing as it's a perspective on how companies perceive outside advice in the modern world, right? So the reality is that if you frame your capability as an organization that can help somebody through a change journey as a product or a thing that you do, then in many ways you are hooking your success on your ability to do something that's a process, or at least it may be some technology integrated. But the reality is, and that's what we've been speaking about for the last hour and a half or whatever, is that people change because they believe the change is right for them. Leaders get their businesses to change because they believe the change is right for them. When I speak to a leader about why they should implement, let's take integrated business planning. Integrated business planning process we're well known for, but it could be for any process, right? When I speak to a leader about why they should do IBP, what I don't put on a slide is say, here's the 5 steps of the process, here's all the steps, here's all the meetings, here's all the things. What you frame is the situation, the story of their current business and the story of their future business, and the reason that they need to change and the why. The old famous the why. Once they understand the why, they're not really that worried about the detail of the how, as long as they trust that you own the how, right? It's a little bit like if you took your car to a mechanic and you dropped him off and you said to him, what's wrong with my car? And he could explain to you in a way that you understand that there's a problem. You don't need to know the size of the shifting spanner that he's going to use to take off the third bolt to the left on the car and then replace the belt with a 13mm belt. Maybe 1 or 2 people I know, but not the average human being. Because I understand the why, the problem, and I understand your capability as a partner to solve the problem. So what we're trying to portray with method to meaning is nothing more than this statement of saying, if the solution I have, if the approach I have, the proven path, if the story about your future that I'm telling you that we could go on together has no meaning for you, then why would you buy into my method?
Yeah.
Why would you believe my method? And why would you go through the pain and the pleasure of the journey? However, meaning is not something that comes out of an interpretation of the textbook. Meaning is a combination of experience, of relevance, in the sense that been there before story, and of the ability to tell a story about the now and the day, and from the two. And I think, so when we talk about method to meaning, what we're actually saying is that when you are thinking about how are you going to drive change in your business and what you are being sold as the method, then if we rewind ourselves all the way back to where we started the session, you're doomed from failure.
Mm-hmm. But I do think, again, with method to meaning, the world is changing. We all recognize that knowledge is more and more freely available, whether we like that or not. Knowledge is freely available. So
Cheaper. Yeah.
and cheaper. Well, actually, it's butchery for free.
Yeah.
Going forward. And so actually, in method to meaning, it's going to be less and less about the knowledge and more about the meaning and how to apply that to actually be successful than it is about the foundation of that knowledge. So we could give people knowledge, and it's why, to be honest, far beyond when I retire, and hopefully for the next 50 years or more, Oliver White will have a strong future, because what you won't be able to buy is that coaching experience. You won't be able to buy, that understanding of that change and how to make it happen. You will be able to buy the knowledge. You will be able to buy the technology for sure. Right? But buying that ability to make that change and be successful is not a commodity that you will buy through AI. And so I think, and often, years ago, people used to say to me, what do you do in Oliver White? And I'd actually think about that and say, we make change happen. And so the reality is, whilst, that method to meaning is we've been doing that. And we've just been using anything to do with running a business as a way of doing that, whether it was around the portfolio, whether it was about demand planning, demand management, whether it was about supply chain, or even a revolutionary process to run a business called integrated business planning. Whichever of those things we've been working on, I always say to people, most of it's common sense. Leaders get it pretty quickly. So if leaders get it pretty quickly, why isn't everybody doing it? All right. If it's that good, all right, well, it's because they're actually delivering the meaning and delivering the change. And in today's world, absolutely, knowledge, you can get it. Systems to support that knowledge, you can get them. But actually, it comes down to, can you make the change happen? And Kirsty's point about the coaching, I often think about it as if you're coaching a game of American football or soccer or netball or whatever, if you look at what makes the most successful coaches, they make sure that the team is ready, right? They're motivational around the team. So not only do they motivate, but they can also give instructions. They, with their team, can also look to see where things aren't going as well as they should do. They can use technology and map the players, etc., and then make pointers to people. They can just as much tell the captain of the team what the captain needs to do to change to deliver a different outcome as they can the individual team members. And the reason I make that point is that coaching is not just coaching of the team that's playing the actual game of change, but the leaders that wanted it, right? And actually, often, it's that piece of the coaching that is the most important, right? Because having that person that is willing to coach that person to make sure that the team will be successful is so, so critical.
You definitely need those champions, don't you? But I think just to develop this point, and Kirsty, coming back to you, how do you tailor education and coaching for different groups?
Well, the how bit is the easy bit. It's making sure that the message resonates for the different audiences. And you start with the top, because it's understanding what's going to motivate them. What is the meaning? Back to Monty's comment. What's the meaning that's going to excite them? And then taking that down to then the next level, because at the end of the day, the context we work in is within business. So there's always the integration, there's always the connect. But when you take it down to the next level, it's connecting it from what drives the leadership, but then what does that mean and how does that translate to them? And so in every case, it's the relevance, so that they understand what benefits they're going to get from this, but also how they have to operate differently. And there will be a to and from, and making sure we then help them understand how do they get to the to from the from in a way that is acceptable. I won't say it's easy, because these change journeys are never easy, but in a way that you can relate to it, you can make sense of it, and to a comment you made earlier, you have faith in it, and so you're prepared to take it on and then see it through. Yeah. It's absolutely that point of commitment. Yeah. But once you've passed that point of commitment and you've actually started to work with it, it's got to work, because that's when it's the second more subtle point of commitment of, does it or doesn't it work? So that upfront piece is so important to make sure that absolutely we are 100% confident as their coaches, but they're 100% confident that the results will actually bear through.
Yeah, what's coming to mind is one of those Russian dolls in terms of the message and the different coaching. And you've got the main message, you take one off, and then you go a bit deeper with a different department. Is that fair? I mean, is there another analogy that you often use?
I think it's a good analogy, because you can actually think of the Russian doll. I was actually trying to think through: is the leader the one in the middle or the one on the outside? Because it could actually work both ways. There has to be that connect that works between them. They actually have to go together in a certain way. Yeah. Otherwise, they're not going to work. But where's the heart of it? The heart of it is the leader. You could argue they're actually that smallest cog, but they're your most important cog in a way. Yeah. Otherwise, the whole thing won't connect.
Just to support what he's saying, the detail follows the principle, right? So I'll use something we talk a lot about as an example, demand planning. We talk about demand planning a lot. Demand planning and a business's ability to forecast its future demand. If you worked with Oliver White, you would have heard us talk about demand planning. Is one of the most complex, interesting, integrated modern fields you can get. It's completely underdeveloped academically. It is completely underexposed in most career paths, but it is fundamental to the modern organization. And the depth of detail that you can get into when you talk about AI and machine learning and all of these things to drive demand planning, you can go into data science that is within the level of academia that most of us wouldn't even begin to understand. But if that's the heart of the Russian doll, then right at the top of the Russian doll is a leadership behavior which says don't use bias. And bias is the behavior that leaders have when they see a plan they don't like and they decide to change the plan, because miraculously changing the plan will change the future result, right? We all know that that's not a good behavior. Even the leaders we work with who won't change their behavior know it's not the right behavior. But for whatever reason, they've got that behavior. Now, you've got this entirely sophisticated, highly detailed academic field that is fully dependent on a single leadership behavior, which is accept the truth. And they are fundamentally linked through from one end to the next. The academia is irrelevant without the simple leadership behavior, accept the truth. Does the leader need to understand all of the academia to change the behavior of accepting the truth? No. So I think that to me is such an important point. Is that at every level of the organization, at every level of sophistication, there's different requirements. But what we find time and time again is right at the top is a leadership behavior that's fundamental, that's simple to explain, and that destroys all the good work below it if that leader doesn't change the behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great point, Monty. Yeah.
I mean, there is an epitome of this at the minute. If you take aircraft manufacture, commercial aircraft, and any of us could go look and see how many of a certain type of commercial aircraft are going to get built this year. Everybody in the industry knows the number is at least 35. So what's that? 50% inaccurate. And yet it's a bit like the emperor's new clothes. Nobody's willing to say, because the OEM keeps saying this number. Everybody else knows it's not that number. Then internally, they're working out why they've got too much working capital, right? Only because they're still using that number, the high number. And it's the epitome of, well, there's a need to change. Well, but what number do we use? Well, we're going to have to use the number that we all believe is right, which happens to be 50% less, right? Because the people that are giving 50% more are doing it for a reason to keep the shareholders happy, short term. But actually, that doesn't mean to say that we should follow that same approach. Because then when we go asking our teams to make a change, and the change is, why have we got too much working capital? Why is there too much inventory there? We need to reduce it. Everybody's looking and saying, well, how can we reduce it when you want us to plan to a number that's 50% more?
Yeah.
Right? That's just not going to happen.
Bad data, yeah.
It's just not going to happen because the focus isn't right. So, yeah. There are lots of examples in the world that, people not willing to make the change.
Yeah. We haven't talked much about sustaining that change yet. And Les, you were talking about chunking these things up. But what are the routines that keep gains from slipping? We're talking about
interesting
cadence, ownership, review and closure.
I guess one of the industry, and it is quite a number of years ago, but I was involved in global operations for Mercedes Racing. And the interesting thing there is that sustainability was actually a bad word in many ways, because unless in business you stand there with all your competitors at the start of a season and say, this year we're all going to sustain, aren't we? We're not going to spend any more money. We're just going to go with what we've got and sustain. Utter nonsense, because the minute that somebody moves forward, you've actually moved backwards. So actually, sustainability is not necessarily the best way of looking at this. It's more of a, how do we make sure that we bed in that change, but then we improve on the change? And so for me, lots of times when we make a change, it's more about making a step change improvement to the way we work. That's why we do it. Once we make the step change, it's critical that we drive ongoing continuous improvement, and we really do plan, do, check. And if the check means that we haven't actually delivered the improvement, then we plan and do again until we do deliver the improvement. Because actually, you've got to have a sense that you're always moving forward, because that should then avoid some of the 10 changes that you need to make the following year. Sometimes we help people make change because they failed in terms of moving things forward again, right? And it's nice because actually they ask us back. But you look at it and you think, it's nice that you recognise we can help you make this change again. But actually, much of this change is the one that you should have actually sustained and driven on. So I guess our approach to that is, in fact, we have a tool called Compass, which actually captures our Class A standard that actually sets out initially the transformation that we want people to achieve so they can self-assess. We can use that as guidance. But beyond what they're able to self-assess to achieve the capability they set out to, there's a level beyond that, right? So not only can they achieve the level that they set to, but they can then, once they get to there, they can actually move beyond that level. And actually we'll recalibrate that level with them each year so that their sustainability is actually an improvement. It isn't actually going backwards. And so there's a process in place that helps them do that. Otherwise, I mean, the classic in business, the one that for the life of me, I don't know why people do, they will come to a point where they're going to implement a new computer system. And one of the first things they say is, what about the data quality? And this is where people look at each other. And somebody has to say to them, well, do you measure the accuracy of the data? No, not really. So how accurate do you think it is? Oh, it's fairly accurate. Well, what does fairly mean? Well, don't know really. When you actually look, it's probably in the region of 50 to 60% accurate. So then they realise, right, what we've got to do is we've got to do a project to improve the data accuracy. So getting ready for this new computer system to go live, they go and do all of the work to get data accuracy up to there. Guess what? 5 years later, the data accuracy is back down there. Because they have no way of ensuring that not only have they put the data right, but they've made a change in the way that they work so that they've always got accurate data. But they got process behind how do they achieve accurate data. And for us, that's why, again, our approach is successful around that proven path, because you can develop the change, you can implement the change, but then you've got to deliver the outcome of that, both in terms of performance and process and people, the way they work. And then you've got to go beyond that. People may have heard this sort of thing about S-curves in Six Sigma, that some people believe they've hit the epitome of change when they hit the top of the S on its side. But the reality is they're about to go down the dip. The challenge is, do they have something that pulls them up the other side to take them higher? If they don't, realistically, they're just going to go back down the dip. So that's our approach to, because there is no such thing as sustainability if you believe that around you the world is changing.
And it's sustainability of success is really how we phrase it, isn't it? Because it's not maintaining status quo; it's maintaining that success, and you've got to continue to improve in order to maintain that success.
Mm-hmm. And that's where sometimes I think we fall into the trap of project thinking versus continuity thinking. Sustainability is that I've made a change and I've made it the way I work. And because we deliver change through projects or initiatives or plans that are resourced, that are focused, we set ourselves as the date of success, the completion of the project. And then we deliver it, but we forget that what makes you sustainable is not buying the bicycle, it's cycling for a long time, every morning for a while, you know. What makes you sustainable is not buying the running shoes, but running every morning for a period of time. I often say to my clients, your go-live day is the start of your project, not the end of it. Yet we design so many initiatives in business to say, we've gone live, it's worked. Now let's cut the budget, let's cut the support, let's cut everything. It surely must work. It's been well designed. Well, actually, back to Les's racing example, The car is not the best version of itself at the start of the season. The car is the best version of itself at the end of the season. After we've raced it 25, 30 times, we've addressed every small issue. We've kept on building it. But also, at the end of the season, every mechanic in that garage understands that car, where in the beginning it's only a few. And I think that's the point. We sometimes fall into the trap of thinking the secret to sustainability is a good project team and not a good get it to run forever team. And then what happens, and just to talk about this, is we do a big ERP implementation, right? And we've got a huge big project team for that. And now we go and we say, okay, we need good data. There's this example. And we say, okay, we need a data management team. Let's put them in the project. But all we keep on doing is we're creating this behavior in our organization that the start of the change is the only change that matters. Sustainability is about being able to comfortably say that the people who are doing the work every day is now also owning the quality and improvement of that piece of work every day. It's not that they have been lifted from A to B. It's that they have been moved from a place where they were excited about the way of working A to a place where they're excited about the way of working B in a way that they will not allow it to revert back. I always say, for me, one of the best moments of any implementation of a client is when I recognize the day when it's been adopted by the business. And if the project team stepped away, it will remain. Because that's the secret of sustainability. And just to add one last thing here, we sometimes mistake sustainability for perfection. A process is only sustainable when it's perfect, when it's right, when it's working like clockwork. No. Because I think one of the biggest mistakes we make in change management is we sell perfection.
Don't let perfection be the enemy of
what
good.
we should be selling is a new way of working.
Yeah.
But if we don't go back to fundamental first principles, that you come to work every day to change the way you work on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, if we don't anchor everything we do on the principle that once we've completed the work, people will just simply do it instead of coming to work every day and looking for the small changes that make it better every time, then no matter how great your change initiative is, it will fall under the burden of corporate inertia. And that's why when I go to leaders and I say to them, you're on a change journey, I'm saying, is your people comfortable with their role as change maintainers once this is in the business? Or are they just waiting for a new app that will do exactly what they want, and when it doesn't, they'll go back to the old app?
Yeah.
That environment is part of the change journey.
Yeah.
That lesson to the business that we will support you there as part of the change journey. And that's why, for me, it's so important that we recognize sustainability is about the environment in which we leave our initiative for continuous improvement.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're nearly at the end of our session. I've written loads of notes. It's been really fantastic. So we asked the question, is your leadership the reason business change keeps failing? If you were to give one key tip to leaders on how to better deal with this, what would that be, going from Kirsty to Monty to Lois? One thing they can do, tomorrow.
Walk the talk. Do what they're asking everybody else to do.
Yeah.
Ask yourself if you understand what the changes that you're asking your employees are going to do mean for you, and then ask yourself, am I ready for that?
Great. And Les?
I tend to agree with Monty's comment, actually, is that if you're willing to go there, then set out the change. If you're not willing to go there, wait until you are.
Well, I mean, wrapping this up, from my perspective, we talked about bold leadership, the point of commitment, which is what we've alluded to there, sustaining that success, accepting the truth as well. I think that's such a big one. Chunking up the changes as well. Boils down to trust. And, it succeeds this only when you get your people to believe in it. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you've got so much out of this as I have. And thank you very much to my panelists.
Thanks, Ollie.
Thank you very much.